Chapter 1 Fire. Through the long, lonely years of my childhood, when my father's palace seemed to tighten its grip around me until I couldn't breathe, I would go to my nurse and ask for a story. And though she knew many wondrous and edifying tales, the one I made me tell her over and over was the story of my birth. I think I liked it so much because it made me feel special. And in those days, there were little less else in my life that did. Perhaps Dhaima realized this. Perhaps that was why she agreed to my demands even though we both knew I should be using my time more gainfully, in ways more befitting the daughter of King Draupadi, ruler of Panchaaali, one of the richest kingdoms in the continent of Bharat. The story inspired me to make up fancy names for myself. Offspring of Vengeance or the Unexpected One. But Thaima puffed out her cheeks at the tendency to drama, calling me the girl who wasn't invited. Who knows, perhaps she was more accurate than I. This winter afternoon, sitting cross-legged in the mere sunlight that managed to find its way through the slit of a window, she said, "When your brother stepped out of the sacrificial fire onto the cold stone slabs of the palace hall, all the assembly cried out in amazement. She was shelling peas. I watched her flashing fingers with envy, wishing she would let me help. But Thaima had very specific ideas about activities that were appropriate for princesses. And I blinked later, she continued. When you emerged from the fire, our jaws dropped. It was so quiet, you could have heard a housefly fart. I reminded her that flies do not perform that particularly bodily function. She smiled with squinted eyes, cunning smile. Child, the things you don't know would fill the milky ocean where Lord Vishnu sleeps and spill over its edges. I considered being offended, but I wanted to hear the story. So I held my tongue, and after a moment she picked up the tale again. We'd been praying for 30 days, from sun up to sundown. All of us, your father, the 100 priests, had it invited to Campilia to perform the fire ceremony, headed by that shifty-eyed pair, Yaja and Upayaja, the queens, the ministers, and of course, the servants. We'd been fasting. Not that we were given a choice, just one meal, each evening, of flattened rice soaked in milk. King Draupadi wouldn't even eat that. He only drank water carried up from the holy Ganga, so that the gods would feel obligated to answer to his prayers. What did he look like? He was thin as the point of a sword, and hard like it too. You could count every bone on him. His eyes sunk deep into their sockets, glittered like black pearls. He could barely hold up his head, but, of course, he wouldn't remove the monstrosity of a crown that no one has ever seen him without. Not even his wives. I've heard not even in bed. Dhaima had a good eye for detail. Father was, even now, much the same, though age, and the belief that he was finally close to getting what he had wanted for so long had softened his impatience. Some people, she continued, though he was going to die, but I had no such fears. Anyone who wanted revenge as badly as your royal father did wouldn't let go of a body and breath so easily. She chipped ruminatively on a handful of peas. Finally, I prompted her. It was the 30th day. And I, for one, was heartily thankful. Milk and rice husk is all very well for priests and widows, but give me the fish curry with green chilies and tamarind pickle any day. Besides, my throat was scrapped raw from gabbling all those unpronounceable Sanskrit words. And my buttocks? I swear they were flat as chapatis from sitting on that freezing stone floor. But I was scared too. The stealing, the glance here and there. I saw I wasn't the only one. What if the fire ceremony didn't work out the way the scriptures had claimed it would? Would King Draupadi put us all to death, claiming we didn't pray hard enough? Once I did have laughed if someone had suggested a king might do that. But things had changed since the day when Drona appeared at the court. I wanted to ask about Drona, but I knew what did she say. Impatient as mustard seeds sprouting in oil. That's what you are. Even though you're old enough to be married off any day now, each story will come in its time. So, when your royal father stood up and poured that last pot of ghee into the flames, we all held our breath. I prayed harder than I had ever done in my life. Though it wasn't for your brother, I was praying, not actually. Kallu, who was the cook's apprentice then, had been courting me, and I didn't want to die before I didn't experience the joys of having a man in my bed. But now that we have been married for 7 years. Here, Daima paused to snort at the folly of her younger self. If she got into the subjects of Kallu, I wouldn't hear the rest of the story today. Then the smoke rose. I interjected with experienced dexterity. She allowed herself to be pulled back into the tale. Yes, and a spiraling, nasty-smelling black smoke it was, with voices in it. The voices said, "Here is the son you asked for. He'll bring you the vengeance you desire, but it will break your life in two." "I don't care about that," your father said. "Give it to me." And then your brother stepped from the fire. I sat up straight to listen better. I love this part of the story. What did he look like? He was a true prince. That one. His brow was noble. His face shone like gold. Even its clothes were golden. He stood tall and unafraid, though he couldn't have been more than 5 years old. But his eyes troubled me. They were too soft. I said to myself, how can this boy avenge King Draupadi? How can he kill a fearsome warrior like Drona? I worried about my brother too, though in a different way. He would succeed in completing the task he was born for. I had no doubt of that. He did everything with such meticulous care. But what would it do to him? I didn't want to think of it, I said, and then Daima made a face. "Can't wait till you appear, huh? Madam, full of yourself?" Then she relented. "Even before we had finished cheering and clapping, even before your father had a chance to greet your brother, you appeared. You are as dark as he was fair, as hasty as he was calm. Coming from the smoke, tripping over to the hem of your sari, grabbing for his hand and almost sending him tumbling too. But we didn't fall. No, somehow you managed to hold up each other. And then the voices came again. They said, "Behold, we give you this girl, a gift beyond what you asked for. Take good care of her, for She will change the course of the history. Change the course of the history? Did they really say that? Daima shrugged. That's what the priests claimed. Who can tell for sure? You know how sounds boom and echo in that hall? The king looked startled, but then he picked the two of you up, holding you close to their chest. For the first time in years, I saw him smile. He said to your brother, I name you Drishtadumna. He said to you, I name you Draupadi. And then we had the best feast this kingdom has ever seen. As Thaima counted out the feast food on her fingers, smacking her lips in happy remembrance, my attention veered to the meaning of the names our father chose. Drishtadumna, destroyer of enemies. Draupadi, daughter of Draupadi. Dhri's name fell within the bounds of acceptability. Though, if I were his parent, I might have picked a more cheerful appellation, like Celestial Victor or Light of the Universe. But daughter of Draupad? Granted, he hadn't been expecting me, but couldn't my father have come up with something a little less egoistic? Something more suited to a girl who was supposed to change history. I answered to Draupadi for the moment because I had no choice. But in the long run, it would not do. I needed a more heroic name. Nights after Thaima had retired to her quarters, I lay on my high, hard bed with its massive posts and watched the oil lamp fling flickery shadows against the pocket stone of the walls. I thought of the prophecy then, with yearning and fear. I wanted it to be true. But did I have the making of a heroine? Courage, perseverance, and unbending will. And shut up as I was inside this mausoleum of a palace. How would history even find me? But most of all, I thought of something that Thaima didn't know. Something that ate me like the rust corroding the bars on my window. What really happened when I stepped from the fire? If there were voices, as Thaima claimed, professing my life in a garbled roar, they hadn't come yet. The orange lick of flames fell away. The air was suddenly cold. The ancient hall smelled of essence, and under it, an older smell. War, sweat, and hatred. A gaunt, glittering man walked towards my brother and me as we stood hand in hand. He held out his arms, but for my brother alone. It was only my brother he meant to rise up to show to his people. Only my brother that he wanted. Dhri wouldn't let go of me, however, nor I of him. We clung together so stubbornly that my father was forced to pick us up, both up together. I didn't forget that hesitation, even though in the years that followed King Draupad was careful to fulfill his fatherly duty and provide me with everything he believed a princess should have. Sometimes, when I pressed him, he even allowed my privileges he kept from his older daughters. In his own harsh and obsessive way, he was generous, maybe even indulgent, but I couldn't forgive him that initial rejection. Perhaps that was why, as I grew from a girl into a young woman, I didn't trust him completely. I turned the resentment I couldn't express towards my father onto his palace. I hated the thick grey slabs of the wall, more suited to a fortress than a king's residence, that sounded our quarters, their tops bristling with sentries. I hated the narrow windows, the mean, dimly lit corridors, the uneven floors that were always damp, the massive severe furniture from generations ago that was sized more for giants than men. I hated most of all the grounds that neither trees nor flowers. King Draupadi believed the former to be hazard to security, obscuring the vision of the sentries. The latter he saw no use for, and what my father did not find useful, he removed from his life. Staring down from the rooms at the bare compound stretching below, and I feel dissection settle on my shoulders like the shawl of an iron. When I had my own palace, I promised myself it would be totally different. I closed my eyes and imagined a riot of color and sound, birds singing in mango and custard apple orchards, butterflies fluttering among jasmines, and in the midst of it, but I could not imagine yet the shape that my future home would take. Would it be elegant as crystal? Solidly precious like a jewel studded goblet? Delicate and intricate like gold frigidly? I only knew that it would mirror my deepest being. There I would finally be at home. My years in my father's house would have been unbearable had I not had my brother. I never forgot the feel of his hand clutching mine, his refusal to abandon me. Perhaps he and I would have been close otherwise. Segregated as we were in the palace wing of our father had set aside for us. Whether from caring or fear, I was never sure. But that first loyalty made us inseparable. We shared our fears of the future with each other, sheltered each other with fierce protectiveness from a world that regarded us as not quite normal, and comforted each other in our loneliness. We never spoke of what each other meant to the other. Bree was uncomfortable with affiliativeness, but sometimes I wrote him letters in my head, looping the words into extravagant metaphors. I love you, Three, until the great Brahman draws the universe back into himself as a spider does its web. I didn't know how then sorely that love would be tested or how much it would cost both of us.